Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Controversial Issues. Tonight, why does Rabbi Coffman keep blowing up my computer live from the Holy Land? Rabbi, welcome back to the show. It's good to hear your voice. Good to see you. Actually, the topic for tonight would be divorce. And to further that divorce topic, I would have to say, I just thought about this a little bit later, or a little bit earlier today. Divorce, what does the Bible say about divorce? Is it okay to get divorced? But also, there's a New Testament, controversial idea of, remarriage in Olam Haba. I mean, if somebody's been divorced 3 times, and then the world to come comes, who's going to be their wife in the world to come? Probably their last wife. I don't know. Hopefully not my second to last one. That one got a little bullet hole in my shoulder for that one. Actually, a stab wound. That's not a joke, by the way. That was, glad I can look back and laugh now. That's really cool. So, welcome to the show. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope y'all are tuning in. I do not have my YouTube channel up, so I don't know what's going on. I do know that Facebook Live has not been faithful to me. It doesn't like my upload speed. So, I'm going to avoid using that from here on, at least until I can figure out how to increase my my speeds on the upload site. So
that'll be great. You can increase the speed and then kill the whole system. So
hey,
just don't blame me.
Hey,
just don't blame me.
I was going to say I have 3 words for you, but it's really only 2. Only you. Yeah, you're the only one. So far, 2.5 years, 3 years maybe. 350 episodes, and you're the only one who has successfully taken me out, completely rendered me useless. But
we are the champions.
You are crazy. Okay, let me go to my channel here and make sure we're live, and it looks like we are. But to verify that completely, I need to go to the Creator Studio. I hope I have the titles all set up, and it looks like I do. And currently, live streaming channel. Give me one moment. And we have 7 watching. Okay, so we are live then. That's good. Okay, so we can move forward. Yes, we can. So divorce and remarriage in Olam Haba. I don't even know where to start with that. I know the church has painted divorce as an absolute taboo. You do not get divorced. You just stay committed. And I'm thinking, in my mind, you have so many people who have been victim to abusive marriages, not just women, but men also. I was actually, if you want to know, send me a message to tell you the whole story. I used to think that was the whole idea of men being abused by their wives was crazy until it actually happened to me. So anyway, with that said, my current wife, Baruch Hashem, my last wife, yes, she's a doll. Baruch Hashem, 17 years. No incidents. At least no bloodshed yet. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So, with that said, to what limit do you take safety as far as or is safety such an issue with Torah that if your health, your well-being is in jeopardy, that divorce may be an absolute? Why are you waiting? Get out. Is there a view in Judaism that says that if your husband or if your wife is just completely violent, you need to get the heck away from them right away? Don't wait. Is there something like that? Is that something that flows in Judaism?
So let's see the source. The source for divorce is Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 24. Right, the beginning of chapter 24 states clear: if a man marries a woman, lives with her, and will be that she will not find favor in his eyes. Now, that's the whole question, exactly what that means.
Right.
For he found in a matter of immorality, he wants to give her a bill of divorce, and he wrote her a bill of divorce, presented it into her hand, sent her from his house. She left his house, and she went and married another man, and all that. So it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear that if there are issues in the marriage, if there are definite issues, then divorce is a legal recourse, right? The whole question exactly how it's done, etc.
Sure. Right.
So the way the Torah looks at it, as the Talmud says, if a person does get divorced, the altar There's like tears. God cries tears, on the altar. He doesn't want to see that there is divorce. God forbid anybody should get divorced. But, of course, there's always a but. And the but is that if it warrants it and it can't be helped, then a person, then there's a mitzvah to get divorced. Now, in the secular world, so we'll get to your questions in a second, but in the secular world, there's a tremendously, high rate of divorce.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
It's probably
Right.
it's probably 6 times the amount in the Orthodox community. It's like basically 6 to 1. I mean, it's a pretty high percentage. Even if you say, in the Orthodox community, let's say the divorce rate is 10%, right? I still think that's high.
Sure.
Right? But someone said, oh, look, it's still increasing. I'm like, you idiot. There's 60% in the secular world that get divorced. Right? The whole question, even why today people want to get married. That's, it's a different, that's a different topic. But in and of itself, when a person gets married, the whole purpose obviously is to, sanctify the marriage. If something goes wrong, and it cannot be fixed, then there's an absolute mitzvah, to get divorced. At the same time, though, marriage is like a plant. If you don't water it, you can try this. This is Botany 101. See, that's why people come here. They can learn all kinds of interesting things. If you don't water a plant, you can try this. If you don't water it, guess what's going to happen?
Right.
It is going to die. Right? That should be pretty obvious. But, if there are issues, then no marriage, no marriage is really perfect. Right? But it's something that has to be worked on. And if it's not worked on, so things creep in, people will go in different directions.
Right.
And the marriage can die. Now, is that what God wants? No, but, it gets even more complicated because when a person gets married, they're reconnecting, they
absolutely.
are connecting to their soul, right? Their soulmate, so to speak. So now you are one complete soul. So if that's the one you're supposed to be married to, then why does divorce happen? Why would divorce happen if you've met your 100% soulmate? Now, again, even if this is your soulmate and this is the person you're supposed to be with, it doesn't mean 100% it's going to go straight and everything's going to go good.
Right.
And everything's going to be easy. It's still something that has to be worked on. I'll tell the following story. The first time, I ever sat with my, my Rebbe in his rabbinical court, so I sat there. Nobody really wanted me there, but since I had, connections, I was able to sit there and not open my mouth. The first case that came in was this, like, really messy divorce case. Like, it went on for, more than an hour. They brought in, someone to try and help out, and they interviewed him and said, what are the issues? And it was a whole big, both families were there. They're yelling and screaming, and, and I was like shell shocked. I was just like sitting there like,
right.
Yep. So one of the things that, that the rabbinic court judges asked, the one that, was helping out with the, we're trying to, mediate, what was going on between the husband and wife, so they asked him and said, is this possible? Is it possible to save, this marriage? So the answer was, if you take the parents out of the equation, right, the parents of these two people, and they're meddling, if you take them out, it can be saved.
That's
but if
funny, right?
If they continue to meddle, and stick their nose in where it doesn't belong, this marriage is finished.
Right.
So, so they wanted to determine, the rabbinical court wanted to determine if it's possible to save the marriage. Now, the question that you brought up, there's always a segue that we always enter into here, and the segue is, so what happens? Persons in, let's say the other spouse has mental issues. Let's say they have, let's say in your case, there are abusive issues. Now, if there's something to be saved, if there's something where it can be worked on, it can be helped there, through therapy and other things. So then that's one thing. If, there is no mitzvah to be in a, certainly in an abusive, an abusive relationship. There is sort of this, this catch-22 that people, who are in them, have it, find it very difficult to extract themselves, right? For any number of, it could be psychological reasons, it could be other reasons, whatever the case is. But in general, if a person's in an abusive, relationship, the first thing certainly that has to be done is there needs to, there needs to, help. Help needs to be gotten. If, person sits down, they go through therapy, they try and work it out. If after, you have to put it through a certain amount of time. It can't just be, well, I just went once, nothing happened, right? Nothing changed or whatever. A person has to find, certainly the right therapist or whatever, which is not an easy thing, in either case to do. But sometimes there's just no hope. Sometimes that, if a person, needs medication, they don't take their medication, or, for whatever reason, it doesn't end up working out. So again, you have to give it a certain amount,
right.
A certain amount of time. But there is no mitzvah, certainly, to be in that type of, relationship. That is, that's for sure. And
right.
Sometimes, when it comes to marrying someone, sometimes, issues like that don't come up, or they are hidden, right? So certainly in the way, Orthodox people marry off their children, they'll go through a matchmaker. They will, they want to find someone who are, similar, to their child or whatever, but you try and uncover as much possible information, as possible. Sometimes information can get hidden. Right. I know of, some stories where this, we can't say this information, about this person because it's Lashon Hara, can't speak badly. Well, why in the world would you not give over certain information if it's going to mess up this other person? Right. Oh, I can't say this person had mental illness. Well, if you put them, if you put them together, and I know of such a case where, a person was clinically depressed, and they're on medication, and it just so happens that information didn't get out, right? That information was not told to the other side, until, it came out later. So that is 100%, so first of all, it's not fair, and it's a recipe for disaster. The whole question in the process itself, it's really, again, not the topic, but, when a person is supposed to give over that type of, medical information, et cetera. So somebody doesn't get messed up, but certainly, so to answer your question in a tremendously roundabout way, if somebody is in that type of relationship, ASAP, a person has to get help. If the help is not warranted, the person doesn't want to go, or it doesn't help, or you don't find the right person, or whatever, then is the question how much a person has to take. So, if a person grows up in the church and, and divorce is taboo and it's forbidden and it's icky and it's got spiritual cooties and, all these other different things, then, they'll say, well, that's your destiny. You are stuck. Well, the Torah doesn't believe in that. I mean, again, there will be, tears that go on the altar because someone gets divorced. But we just read from Deuteronomy chapter 24, it's clear as day, if someone is, someone needs to get divorced, then, all things being equal, then that is what is supposed to happen.
Right.
If there's no other recall, if there's no other way, and it's not a great thing by any, by any stretch, and it's complicated. If you have kids and, all that, that's definitely true, and things have to be sorted out, and, all kinds of things that go into it. But at the same time, if it needs to be done, it should be done, right? A person has to go to the right sources, the right channels, or whatever. But
right.
Within Judaism itself, it's clear. If it needs to be done, it should be done. Nobody has to be in a bad relationship, but it's something that the secular world doesn't understand.
Right.
And the secular world doesn't understand. You have to work at it. And today, even in Orthodox circles, there are more people getting divorced, at young ages because if life gets hard, and things happen, people do not want to work on it. For someone to look at themselves in the mirror and say, hey, where'd that gray hair come from? They look in the mirror and they say, like, this is a real hard thing.
Right.
Well, marriage is a serious thing. It's not, some people think it's like a 5-year option to renew. Maybe. Maybe it's a 2-year option to renew. Maybe it's a half a year, but
trade in for an upgrade.
I heard a great rabbi once say, how do you kill a great romance? Get married. So
Wow.
it's something like anything else. If it's worthwhile, you have to work at it.
I just did
if it's, go ahead.
an internet search. What is the divorce rate in Christianity? Because I was kind of curious. And it says USA Today published a statement said that 42% of married Christians have gone through divorce as Christians. 42%. That's crazy. Wow. Mm-hmm. So it's like
but in the secular world it's higher.
Yeah. Right. Actually, I don't know that I don't even know that that's true. I mean,
why?
Just because, out of all the people that I know, I have a lot of secular family in Oklahoma that don't even associate with Christianity, and they've been married for years and years and years and years and years. Just like I don't know, it's just I think it maybe just kind of like, even. I don't know that. I'm just saying in general. I guess I could ask the same question to Google and see what it comes up with, but
at the same time, if somebody lives together, and then they get married, then the divorce rate skyrockets. And then it's like
that's true.
It's like 70-75%. So you say if you live together, all of a sudden what happens? So you know what happened? Now you get a piece of paper that obligates you. It's not the same thing.
Right.
If you live together, there's a famous story with William Hurt many years ago, about 15, 20 years ago. He was living with someone, had 2 kids, and he walked out. And the woman he was living with wanted half his money. It's like no such thing. I'm not giving you half my money. So she called him on it and sued him for common law marriage.
Oh wow!
Right now, common law marriage is on the books in certain states. I don't think it's in all states. It's in certain states. For non-Jews, they live together. That's marriage. Right, that's considered marriage. You walk out, that's considered divorce. Right, by Noahides, by non-Jews. So that being the case, she says, "I want half your money." He said, "No such thing." She got something.
Right.
In the end, she got something, but she didn't get it. She didn't get exactly, exactly what she wanted. But, I understand why. Certainly, why a man's going to live with a woman. A woman, what security does she have? He can just walk out anytime. They say, no, you got kids, you got this, but if someone's got a piece of paper,
right?
They say, the piece of paper doesn't mean anything. Oh, yes, it does.
Hey, a good comment on Facebook. On YouTube chat. Andrea Weinberg said, divorce is mentioned in Torah before marriage, and she said a rabbi said that's because it is because we should never feel trapped, like there is no answer, and so it's pretty interesting. I've seen some.
Now, in the secular world, secular Jews, if you mention like these statistics, that it's like, in the secular world, it's more than 50%. In the Orthodox world, maybe it's 5%, maybe 10% if you're lucky. They'll say, oh, that's because they're trapped and they can't get out of it, and that's totally not true. When that wedding document is signed, the ketubah is signed, right? So their obligations. It's the first time in the history of man that a man has an obligation to a woman, right? He's got to provide a house, he's got to provide her with clothes, conjugal relations, other things he's got an obligation to do. And if God forbid it goes sour, then he has to provide, as well. It's the first time in history that was the case. So, people jump up and down and say, oh, the Torah is backwards and it's sexist and it's this and it's that, all these different things. But, this is the first document in history that protects the rights, certainly protects the rights, of women. So, so again, people make the claim and say, oh, you're stuck and you're this and you can't get divorced. And, it's only the man who can give the divorce and he can extort his wife and all that. Yeah. A lot of that may be true, in some ways, but nobody is stuck. In the Orthodox community, nobody's stuck. There can be unfortunate circumstances. That's true. But nobody is stuck. If it's bad and it can't be worked out, Torah says clear, you're allowed to get divorced, right? That is, that is pretty clear, about that. So that's a misnomer that, I've heard, over the years, and they're like, look, see,
Right.
divorce in the Orthodox community is growing. I'm like, it's not 60%. 60% is like, that's 6 out of 10.
Right.
So, I think it should even be higher than that. But 6 out of 10. If in the Orthodox community you're saying it's 1 out of 10.
Right.
That's a huge difference.
That's big
So,
time. Yeah.
you want to break it down and say, no, it's because of this, because of that, because of the other. You can say whatever you want, but the bottom line is, because the way marriage is set up, there shouldn't be divorce if
Right.
it's done the right way.
Right. With the right understanding.
Divorce should not exist, but you see on the books it does, because if it goes awry, then people should get divorced, no question about it.
Right, right. And just some wisdom from my dear friend Jason Akers, who is my tech guy, who's also on YouTube as Green Acres Pest Control. By the way, if you guys, everybody has pests at some time, moths, ticks, fleas, bed, whatever.
Kids.
Go to Green. Kids. Go to Green Acres Pest Control on YouTube. He's got an amazing series of videos. You need to subscribe to it, because even if you've never had troubles with it, you may, and Chas v'shalom, we don't want that, but just in case, great guy. But a little bit of Torah wisdom coming from Jason Akers. He says he has heard that the leading cause of divorce globally is marriage. Just saying. I think he's right.
Well, if you don't get married, you can't get divorced, right?
Jason, you're a nut, man. Almost nuttier than Rabbi Coffman, who blew up my system 3 times. Really, Rabbi, come on, man. 3 times, 2 times. This was a close.
Bunch of kids that are teenagers. A friend of mine, always claims that a teenager is like a creation in and of themselves. So I have a bunch of them. So you can see it's wearing me down.
Yeah.
Right here and everything else.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Orthodox, but yeah, okay, cool. Is this rabbi a Chabadnik? That was not Muslim. No. Right?
No. No, but doesn't mean I don't like Chabad.
Right. That's like me.
Respect for what Chabad does, no question.
That's like me. I'm not a Chabadnik. I'm actually redneck. More properly pronounced redneck.
that will make a whole show in and of itself.
But I love Chabad.org. I love all the rabbis there. They led me. They helped lead me out of Christianity. So Baruch Hashem for that. So yeah.
So let's get the second part of your question about the next world and
yes,
and about resurrection.
Okay, let's just so that the people can actually follow along specifically why I'm asking the question. Most of them will know. Who? Let me just type this in. My wife. There's a New Testament reference specifically that discusses this. And I was hoping to pull that up, but I can't remember what the verse was. And I believe it was, where's it at? And of course, come on, really? They don't talk about that on Google? What's up with that? So anyway, it says, who will be giving, if I was married here and married there, when I get to heaven, who's going to be my wife, the first or second wife? So that's the general idea. I'll look for the verse in just a few minutes. But a lot of us out there probably do wonder that. Especially, I would say, pretty much everyone who was in the Christian community and has never had the opportunity to discuss this topic is wondering the same thing. This is my third wife, the only one that I actually love. So I'm hoping that she'll be the one that if it even works that way. But see, Jesus said something that they're not even given in marriage or whatever. There's no marriages or people given in marriage in the world to come. That's what the New Testament says. So what is the view with Torah, Tanakh, and with Judaism in general?
Well, it's interesting that we mentioned before that when a person gets married, and when I was engaged, there was a book that I was going to read. I didn't really get past the introduction. It was a book by Rabbi Kaplan called Made in Heaven.
Okay.
And in the introduction, he writes there that, this is such an important decision. It doesn't just affect you, it affects your wife and affects your kids and, like all future generations. I'm like, who, me? No, I shut the book. I was like, wow. I was like, that's too intense. I'm like, what, are you kidding? I'm like, I'm just going to get married after, learn about different things or whatever. But, that's like, that's like too intense for me. So, you have to understand when a person comes down to this world, they're coming down with pretty much half a soul, and they have to,
right.
They have to connect, to their other half. Now, if a person meets their soulmate, right? So, if they meet their soulmate, so then, again, if it's nurtured right and everything goes good, so then, that should be fine. If not, then even though that person's soul is complete, right, so to speak, you have, two halves complete the soul. A person marries the wrong person, right? So then that messes everything up. If God forbid, a Jew intermarries, so that means that their soulmate, a non-Jew is not their soulmate, right? Cannot be their soulmate. If they convert, okay, it could be, right? But if a person marries a non-Jew, right? So then the other half of their soul, what happens to them? This is just one case, right? This is why it gets so scary, because now God has to change all these things because you married the wrong person.
Right.
And if you married the wrong person, well, you had kids that you really shouldn't have had, but God allowed it to happen. So in one case scenario, think of the tree and all the branches that you made that shouldn't have been here. And thinking about the other side, the other half of the soul that also doesn't marry the right person. Right? They're also going to, they also end up marrying the wrong person. So look at, you're taking two people, right? Two people, the repercussions are catastrophic. Totally. That's about intermarriage, right? Now, intermarriage, 60, 70%, right? So that is absolutely catastrophic. Now, what if somebody, let's say they marry a Jew, right? A Jew marries a Jew, but let's say they also don't end up, marrying the right person. They get married for whatever reason, but they end up marrying the wrong person. Right? If they end up marrying the wrong person, similar things. So, question could be, how could it be that, if someone gets married, how could it be that that's not their soulmate? Right? Well, certainly if they marry a non-Jew, that's for sure it's not. But if, how does the person really know? So, we don't fully, know. It is pretty, tell one personal, anecdote. I was convinced, when I came to Israel when I was 23, there's no possible way, since I loved America so much, there's no possible way I'm going to marry an American, right? And God says, really? Think again, right? And, I ended up, meeting my wife here, and, been married 25 years. So, so my wife said, but if you would have married an Israeli, so, every third word comes out of your mouth, it's either a TV show, a basketball player, or something else. I said, no one would have understood it anyway. I'm like, that's not really the point.
Right.
It's like, no, that is the point. Like, anyway, so, if a person marries the right person, fine. If a person, let's say, so a person gets divorced, or let's say their spouse dies, the person they were supposed to marry, they die and they remarry. Now, all things being equal, let's say, second marriage, even though the Talmud says second marriage is like, it's hard to split in the sea, right? Finding a marriage in general, finding a spouse is like that. Finding a second spouse, that's going to be as good as the first spouse, let's say, all things being equal, that, the statistics go through the roof. I mean, how many second marriages are, as good as a person's first marriage? I mean, if a person's first marriage was good, it's probably, second marriages are fraught with all kinds of problems, with all kind of baggage and, different things that people bring. Doesn't mean people don't get married, a second time.
Right.
Or whatever. Someone gets divorced, which is most likely the case. So when it comes to the next world, right? When it comes to the next world, there's a whole question. The whole question, what body does that person come back? If they come back, a person has to merit having a portion of the world to come. And even if they merit a portion of the world to come, is the whole question when the world to come is.
Right.
Is it after the Messiah, before the world gets destroyed, and then the world comes back, and then there's resurrection, or does resurrection happen before, and then there's the world to come? Right? There's a whole question exactly. How that's all set up. But, again, even if a person merits coming back to this world and getting resurrected, what do they look like? Right? Because this is not the first time they're probably here. You go back to when we spoke about reincarnation, a person's probably been here, 3 times, maybe 4 times, tops. So they've been in different bodies. So the question is, as is brought down in the Zohar, when it comes to Kabbalah, that a person is going to come back in this world in a different type of body. So I remember I asked my Rebbe this. I go, what does that mean? He goes, how do I know what it means? He said, I haven't met anyone who's been in that world and never come back. So he said, just know it's a different, it's a different type of body. So being obnoxious, I said, so what does it mean? He goes, did you hear what I just said? I don't know anyone who's been there and come back.
Right,
So
right.
he said, it's a different type of body. That's it. Fine. Now, this different type of body, as I've heard, rabbinic scholars say, that probably the closest body that a person was in that helped that person reach their spiritual potential, that's probably the body he's going to get up, right? If he has the merit to get up, probably that body that helped him the most, reach their spiritual potential, that'll be the body that's going to help him. That's going to be the body that, they'll get up in. So, how do we know which one it is? I mean, nobody knows. It's, as we mentioned, we don't know about past life experience. We don't know, what we look like or whatever. I told one of my rabbis very much steeped in Kabbalah, said if I ever get a hold of, my reincarnated soul, he said I'll grab him by the throat and whatever. He said, listen, if you looked at him in the mirror, you wouldn't know who he was. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that's not really the point. He goes, that's exactly the point. He said, it doesn't matter what you've gone through. If you'd look at him in the face, you'd have no idea. No idea. I'm like, all right, I got the point. So someone, so there's a whole question in the world to come in general, what it's going to look like, right? It is, according to the Rambam, according to Maimonides, not going to look any different than what it is now, right? It's going to be very similar. Others say it's going to be totally different. It's going to be more of a spiritual world, right? So if, according to the Rambam, it's kind of like what we're doing now, which is that nobody has an evil inclination, right? So, then we can keep doing the shows. No one will hate me. Everyone, just love every single word that comes out of my mouth. So that'll be good. My ratings will go up. But,
No, it's funny.
If it's supposed to be like that, right? Like everyday life, even though we're not going to have an evil inclination, it could be that, that person who, helped represent that connected soul, right? In other words, that other half of the soul, that's the person they're gonna, that's the person that they should, they should be with. Now, again, even if they marry someone else, even the person dies, they marry someone else, and they have, a great relationship, etc. Most likely, it's probably going to be the first person that, the first person that they loved, and made that very strong impression. Because again, usually, no matter how good a second marriage is, it's never, it's probably doesn't compare to the first marriage, and that a person's first, certainly a person's first love. Again, all things being equal, that everything was good and whatever. But it's
Let me ask you.
It would seem that those two halves connecting, are going to be that soulmate. Now, even a person gets married a second time, so what about, so that half of the soul sort of, is gone. So the other, that other person, fulfills that. So then there's a whole spiritual, question. Can that second soul, also be your soulmate? Why shouldn't that be the case? Because they're taking over for the first soul. So it could be a person has more than one soulmate, right? That, obviously not at the same time. Not enough room in the person for that. Imagine the souls fighting. It's like, no, it's mine. No, it's mine. They're fighting it out. But in general, you should have the, there is such concept. There is definitely such a concept where you can have, more than, potentially more than one, soulmate. But second, if as the Talmud says, finding your soulmate, is as hard as, for God is parting the sea, which that definitely needs further explanation because God can do anything, so he can also find a person's soulmate. But, nonetheless, finding a second soulmate, the statistics just went through the roof. I mean, to find, somebody that they're going to get along with and, everything else, second time around with all the baggage and everything else that a person went through, that's not a very simple thing. And I think if you look at, yeah, go ahead.
I want to throw another scenario out.
Of course you go now. I had no doubt. That's why I'm sitting down. Go ahead. Go for it.
Okay. So the idea that when the world to come happens, and we're in this heaven mindset whatever we perceive that to be. Will there be? I'm going to ask you some questions, but I don't want you to give me long answers. I just want a really quick answer because I'm going somewhere with it. Yeah, that's really odd to request. I know, especially for you. So
I want you to explain me all the secrets of the universe. You have 30 seconds.
Exactly. So in the world to come, will there be sin? Will everything be in harmony? Because I mean, the whole idea in Christianity paints it, there's not going to be sorrow, there's not going to be pain, no suffering, and and the whole heaven idea is, if there's any truth to that in Torah Judaism, then let's say that the person did have 3 wives, and let's say he didn't like his 3rd wife. He wished he was still married to his 2nd wife. Well, logically speaking, would be, well, when you get to heaven, then whichever one you wished you were with, that'll be the one that you would actually be with. So does that jive in Judaism, or is there just not any information? I mean, I can accept the answer that there's just not any information on this topic. It's just,
I mean, a lot of this is based and pretty much steeped in Kabbalah.
Okay.
There is a lot of talk in Tanakh, about the world to come, and the Rambam says, we can't try and figure it out because, there are contradictions all over the place, right? There are contradictions in Tanakh all over the place, and so someone once asked me, they said, like, what's your opinion on all this? So there's a book's not in English, written by Rabbi Chaim Friedlander, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, his name be blessed. He was the spiritual mentor in the Panovich Yeshiva probably about 70, 80 years ago, and he wrote a number of works on the holidays, etc. And he also wrote about belief in God and Emunah, these type of things. And one of the things he wrote about is about this whole idea about what's going to be. What's going to be in the world to come, and he brings a lot of different opinions from the earlier commentators, the later commentators, and basically there is a tremendous divergence of opinions. So someone asked me, they said, well, what's your opinion? I said, well, you got the Rambam, you got the Ramban, you got Nachmanides, you got Maimonides, you got you got the Ravid, you got this one, you got that one, you got all these different rabbinical authorities, going in a lot of different directions. I said, no, I'm asking you, what's your opinion? I'm like, there are 20 different opinions. Nobody knows, right? It's not clear. It's clouded, right? It's clouded in what is, what's supposed to be. So that pretty much gets me out of the question. But, if you, in general, in the next world, we're not, the evil inclination right now is on its last legs, right? It's basically on its last legs, and the Talmud tells us that the evil inclination is going to get shechted, it's going to get ritually slaughtered, meaning it's going to get destroyed, right? So in the world to come, as the prophets say, the lion and the lamb will dwell together, and this and that. That means there's going to be no more war. Right? Everybody's going to recognize that God runs the world. There will be no evil inclination. So there won't be, no stealing, no hubcaps, no, none of these negative things, because the people who make it to the next world, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be that, so many. I mean, you talk about in Zechariah chapter 14, when you talk about, what's going to be, at the end of days. It's a favorite topic, certainly among Christians and certainly ex-Christians also. When you talk about the end of days, it seems like it's pretty bad, right? There's going to be this war of Gog and Magog, right? It seems like it's going to be an absolute bloodbath. At the very beginning, 1/3 of the world's going to get destroyed. 1/3, right? Wiped off the face of the map. So, the question is, who is going to be left? Right? Who is going to be around, at the end of days? So the only people who are going to be there are going to be the ones that had a connection to God before, right? If they didn't have a connection to God, they were idolaters, whatever, and they don't have the merit, they are not going to survive. They're just going to be wiped off the face of the map. So the people that are going to be left are going to be the ones that are going to be in tune, and not only that, but everyone's going to agree when the Messiah comes. Which is actually kind of interesting. Everyone's going to agree that he is the Messiah of God. There's going to be no question, right? There's going to be no question. Now, there's certain things the Messiah has to do, but it is interesting that when the Messiah comes and everyone agrees, he is the Messiah, what's the first thing people are going to try and do? And try and kill him, right? Which also boggles the mind. If everyone understands, he is the person chosen by God, and in that generation, he's gonna bring the world back to redemption, and there are specific things he has to do, right? One of them is, as the Rambam Maimonides brings down, and this is going to be a killer for some people, no pun intended, is he cannot die. The Messiah cannot die. There's a Messiah from the house of David, a Messiah from the house of from Yosef. The whole question if the Messiah of Yosef dies or he doesn't die, whatever the case is, the Messiah of David cannot die. Now, how do we know? How do we know that he can't die? So the Talmud tells the story of Bar Kokhba, right? Or as he's known in the Talmud as Bar Koziva, right? There was the last rebellion against the Romans, and the Romans couldn't wipe him out. In the end, he ended up getting killed, right? He ended up getting turned on, and he ended up getting killed. And Rabbi Akiva at that point thought, the great Rabbi Akiva thought that Bar Kokhba was the Messiah. Now, when Bar Kokhba died and he was killed, Rabbi Akiva says, I made a mistake. I made a mistake because Rabbi Akiva understood you cannot die in the process. You cannot be the Messiah and die.
Interesting.
So the Rambam says, from there, we learn clear as day that the Messiah has to be alive. If he dies anytime during the process, well, then he wasn't the Messiah. Right? There are other things he has to do as well, but that's the main, that's the main thing. So it would seem, from what we do know, it would seem pretty clear that, there's going to be world peace, right? Whoever's left, if there is no evil inclination, there will be no killing. There will be no murder. There will be no more death. Now, again, if the world to come comes before resurrection, if it comes before resurrection, then whoever's alive at that time will have to die and then see if they have the merit to come back, right? Even if they're alive in the world to come, it's hard for me to imagine that if they make it to the world to come, then they won't get up at resurrection. But, I'm not God. I've never played him on TV, and I don't like George Burns either. So in any of those cases, I have to get that like wavy mustache and, walk a little bit like this. Anyway, we're not going to get into that. But in general, if that's the case, the resurrection would happen later, right? So even if the world to come exists before resurrection, what that is going to mean is those people are going to have to die and then see if they come back, because no one's going to be around by, resurrection is if you have the merit to get up, you get up. But it gets complicated because, when the Messiah comes and, all the dust settles, whatever, the world's going to look like, whenever the dust settles, question's going to be, okay, now that these, people are there and, those souls waiting, in the soul world to come back to this world and the world to come, the question is, how long does that world to come last? Is it a short time? Is it a long time? And then there's resurrection, or do you have the world to come and resurrection? Whatever. It's a complicated, it's a complicated thing. I can say one thing, and that is that if there's going to be a war, right? Not everyone agrees there's going to be this war to end all wars. And, some say that World War I, World War II took care of that. In other words, it's going to be a peaceful thing, but it's very hard to imagine what's going on, today. People are already calling for the end of the world because of, what's going on with North Korea, if anything happens or not, and that could start something, whether it does or not, who knows. But, at the end of the day, everyone agrees we're getting closer. The only question is when. When it's gonna take place. But the Vilna Gaon 250 years ago, his students said in the Vilna Gaon's name, which is an interesting thing, and that is that if there's going to be a war, the Vilna Gaon is said to have said it's going to take 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Now that is absolutely remarkable because 250 years ago, there's no such thing as a missile. There's no such thing as a nuclear missile. So what the Vilna Gaon seemingly, meant is talking about, a nuclear war, or something certainly like that. Again, not everyone agrees. that there is going to be a war, but it seems pretty clear. It seems pretty clear from from Zechariah chapter 14. It definitely seems clear that there is going to be a war, and it's going to make whatever happened before, whatever wars occurred before, going to make it look like child's play.
Right.
Speaking, I mean, it's going to take months, months to to bury these bodies, if there are any bodies to bury. I mean, if you look at the rhetoric in Tanakh, it doesn't look pretty. So someone's like, okay, what's your opinion? So I'll tell you, whatever it's worth, I would say beyond the shadow of a doubt, I shouldn't say beyond the shadow of a doubt, but, if you read the verses in Tanakh, it looks pretty clear it's going to be some major bloodbath, right?
Wow,
that
right.
that is the way, that's the way it sounds.
Right.
Does it have to be that way? The Talmud says no. If we do what we're supposed to do, it's very peaceful. If not, then God can put up a king like someone like, Mr. Haman himself, Mr. Haman, and everyone's going to do tshuva. The Jewish people will repent, and then the Messiah will come that way, right? So if you would ask, and if I was a betting person, and you'd say which way is it going to go, I'd probably say the latter more than the former.
Sure.
Right? The world's not getting better. It doesn't seem like it's getting better in that, in the next 20, 50 years or whatever, that, everyone's going to be doing the right thing, and that's going to bring the Messiah. Could happen. Maybe I'm just a pessimist. Look, the Cubs won the World Series, so anything can happen, right? So therefore, could everyone do the right thing and be on the right path when the Messiah comes in a great way? Absolutely, right? But, if you look at what's going on outside, just in general, that's very hard to imagine. So, what's going to be, how it's going to be, it's all clouded. It's all clouded, definitely, in mystery. The real question is who's going to be left. When the smoke clears, who is going to be, who's going to be left. It's not going to be a high percentage. It's definitely not going to be a high percentage, right? Because certainly it seems a third of the world is going to be wiped out in one shot. In a very short amount of time. So, the way the Malbim, one of the great commentators about 100 years ago, sets it up before 9/11, you wouldn't have even imagined. You would have thought he was a crackpot, right? Because, what he sets up in Zechariah is that you're going to have Edom, which represents the Western world. Esav is Edom, right? Esav is called Edom, and Edom represents the Western world, and they're going to fight against Yishmael, right? They're going to fight basically against the Muslims. So the Malvim says, what do you have over here? You have something set up that there's going to be this war. There's going to be this war to end all wars because they have difference of opinion in religion. Well, boy, that's pretty prophetic, isn't it? It's the Western world against Islam. That's definitely what you see. But at the same time, the Malbim says while they're fighting each other, they're going to realize, why are we doing this? We're really doing this for the sake of the Jewish people. And if we're doing it for the sake of the Jewish people, we shouldn't be fighting against each other. We should fight against them. So what happens? They make a pact and they march towards Jerusalem to try and destroy the Jewish people. And then the Messiah comes and the rest is history. It is interesting that the Malbim says who gets hit first. According to the Malbim, seems to say that anywhere close to the land of Israel, they're going to get hit first. Iran, Iraq, Egypt, like all these places, they're all going to get wiped out first. Now, one of my rabbis, very much steeped in Kabbalah, told me a few weeks back, said that his Rebbe in Kabbalah said that, because of everything happened in Europe, it looks like Europe's going to get wiped out first. But, that's definitely against, the Malbim. But, nobody knows. Again, it's pretty much, clouded in, secrecy. The people who know aren't talking, right? The people who know are sitting there flapping their gums. Now,
Sure.
There's a medrash that says that, if there is going to be a war, it's going to start with the king of Paras. Where is Paras? Modern day Iran. So, that would seem to be, to make sense. As well, could this thing with North Korea start something? Certainly could. But if you look at the way things are set up, and I mentioned by 9/11, before 9/11, it's kind of like those Joe Isuzu commercials, like, this car can outrun a speeding bullet. He's like, he's lying, right? So if you would have mentioned before 9/11, there's going to be this great war between the Western world, and in the Muslims and Islam. I would have said, "What are you kidding? Like, like what have you been smoking? Like, you remember, Bush goes into Afghanistan and said, this is not a war against Islam. Yeah, but he blew up like so many things looking for Osama bin Laden. So at the same time, without 9/11, we wouldn't have, you would have looked at this Malbim. You said, okay, that's very nice. When's that going to be? That's his opinion. We'll see what happens. Before 9/11, it's not even a reality. 9/11 happens, all these different things start, these ducks start lining up in a row. This is an unbelievable thing. Now, it can happen at any time. So, the world is just a powder keg waiting to, basically waiting to erupt. So, again, if I was a betting man, I would say, yeah, it's going to start in the Middle East, and that's where it's going to go, or, whatever the case is. So, when it comes to that, once the dust settles, then everybody, whoever survives, are going to recognize, that God runs the world. Non-Jews won't be able to convert, but they're going to do God's will, whatever their obligations. Whatever their obligations are going to be, because they can't say all of a sudden now I want to convert. I've seen the light. Well, it's too late, because once you've seen all the miracles and you survive the miracles, that's it. Your free will is taken away. Same thing by the time of King Solomon and David. There were miracles going on left and right. So I want to convert. Why do you want to convert? You want to convert because you see the Jewish people now are on top, and there are all these miracles that happen for them. So, when you look at it in those terms, free will is going to be taken away, right? Everyone's going to be doing the will of God. So, back to the original question, is there going to be all these other things going on, all these terrible things? That's going to go by the wayside,
right?
Because everyone's going to be doing what God wants them to do, and there will be world recognition. This is the Messiah. This is who he is. This is what's going to happen. And, kind of like Cold War breaks out, that's, everyone's going to recognize this is the reality and, do exactly what God wants. What God wants at the same time doesn't look like, you read these verses, in Tanakh. It does not look pretty. It definitely does not look pretty at all. And hopefully, we'll be some of the ones that are actually, going to survive. But, this is why in this time, a person has to work on their belief in God as strong as possible, because what we see in the outside world is pretty scary. And, if someone's in tune and they're doing what they need to do, they have to let God do what he needs to do. Also as crazy as that may seem. So, how it's going to end up is pretty much anybody's guess. At the same time, it's just a matter of when and who is going to be the components, to actually start it, and then everything just sort of goes haywire, and that's not a leap of faith. That's not really that hard to fathom when it happens. Okay, so we'll place bets. We'll place bets when it's going to be, but people have made claims before, and doesn't mean they're right. Right? Definitely doesn't mean they're right, and people have been wrong. So, it seems some say it's going to come out of nowhere, right? Totally out of nowhere. Other people say it's going to be, it's going to be more systematic. We'll see. We'll see. We, everyone right now seems to have a front row seat, and where, when, and how. Those are the three major questions. What's going to be at the end. So hopefully that answered the majority of your questions. All right, it took me 10 minutes to get there, so you cut me some slack, but yeah, that's what I think about that.
You did good. You did real good. Yeah. I guess who was it that said that? You did good, kid. You did real good. Some
you could
movie
have been
star.
A contender.
Wow. Well, it's been a good episode. I'll send you a private message on the next possible topic for next week, for 2 weeks from now. So had a few ideas along the way. So I really appreciate everybody tuning in and watching, and keep up the good comments and stuff, and see a lot of activity on the YouTube chat, and that's really good. So just remember, be respectable to each other. To all religions, there's new people will come to Tanakh Talk on a regular basis, and actually view it for the first time. They may be concerned. They may throw out concerns. Don't necessarily jump on them thinking they're trolls right away. I mean, they may end up being trolls, but hey, I was a troll at once, so have a little mercy.
Well, if they come the first time and they come to the show, that's bad news.
If they come back,
I feel their pain. They can throw other things on me. I'll take it, no problem.
and by the way, just to clarify, you almost took me out for a third time. You've done it twice already. I don't know, today, thank Jason.
Listen, I'm still batting 66%. That's pretty good. 67%.
Hey, Jason Akers was my kryptonite for you. He neutralized the situation. Thank you, brother. You're a miracle worker with computers.
Give him 3 more plugs. He just saved you.
And with bugs. So that's good, man. We've had a good show. I think we really covered a lot of really important issues, and yeah, so if there's more questions, feel free to message Rabbi, or you can try to send me a message to knocktalkquestions@gmail.com. And if it's something we can roll on to next show, we will. Otherwise, we'll move on to another topic. If you have any recommendations for a new topic, controversial topic, of course, send it to the same email address. Again, I'll repeat, Tanakh Talk Questions, TENAK, Tanakh Talk Questions @gmail.com, and that's where I will be able to find your recommendations. So anyway, Rabbi, it's been fun. It's good to see you again. Good to see all of you guys, and look forward to seeing you all again on the other side. Shalom Aleichem to you all, and see you later.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Take care, everybody.
חשוב מכל חשוב